Hello, and welcome to Conquer Your Finances, Conquer Your Life. I'm your host, Dawn Santoriello, and I'm here to empower you to live a happier, healthier, and wealthier lifestyle. Today, my guest is Professor Victor Ricciardi, and he is actually a professor, an assistant professor at the Goucher College Financial Management. He teaches undergraduate courses in personal financial planning, financial management, investments, behavioral finance, and the psychology of money. He also is a leading expert on academic literature, and he's also researches a lot of issues in behavioral finance. He has wrote 2 books, one which is called, he co-authored The Psychology of Financial Planning and Investing, and then he just came out with a book that's going to be out in June, so the end of this month, and that is called Financial Behavior, the Players, the Services, Products, and the Markets. So look for that, that'll be out. Well, Victor, thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here as my guest.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, since you're a professor, you must know a lot about, you're very knowledgeable about finance, so this will be great for my audience to teach them. Like, first question is, okay, what is traditional finance? Like, what does that really mean?
Traditional finance is essentially the notion that people, or what's typically taught in college level, or most advisors are trained in that people make rational decisions, people shouldn't feel emotion, people are essentially calculators when they make decisions. And so we're highly structured, we don't feel stress, and maybe the highly educated finance professional would. But many times the individual investor, especially somebody who's a novice about investing, or especially if you're in your 20s and you're just starting about investing for the first time, you find that you do have emotional issues.
Yeah, they're very emotional. It's like, when the market's going up, it's like, yes, this is great. But when it goes down, the first one's calling, okay, jump out, jump out.
Exactly.
So they should probably follow more of and that's what us as financial planners tell people, okay, you have the theory in place here, you have the strategy, so stick to the strategy. When times are tough or times are bad, and that'll help. Right?
Exactly.
And now there's another area called, too, that you work in, it's behavioral finance. So how would you describe that compared to traditional?
Behavioral finance would be that we are affected by our emotions, we're affected by things around us, our past experience, our value system, our ethics, our religion, and so forth. Our family history. So there's even an area that I'm taking coursework in right now called financial therapy. And so what it deals with is, looks at something that's really 3 levels to it. The first level would be known as flashpoints, looking at something like our family history, how our parents influenced us about money. So if we had a positive flashpoints or positive memories about money, then we have certain money beliefs, and those money beliefs, if they're positive, if we say, I want to have a lot of money, I want to save, I enjoy saving for retirement, then we're more likely to have positive outcomes. If we had negative flashpoints in adulthood, or essentially more in our childhood or our teenage years, we essentially have we develop these money scripts or money beliefs that are very detrimental or negative, and later on, that's in adulthood what forms things like money disorders. And so the worst possible disorders are something like hoarding, gambling disorders, but many times those type of that's much more deep psychological issues, they're found related to our childhood and our own teenage experience, especially within the family unit.
So basically, if we're born into poverty, like according to what you're saying, like we're basically getting that mentality of like, oh, we're always going to be poor.
Not necessarily. If you're born, that can be your environmental issue. But if you have a family unit where even if you're poor, if you had a father figure or a mother figure that encouraged you to put money into the stock market, and you made money, or if you embrace the idea of a budget, if that family unit experience is very positive, I think you're more likely to have positive outlooks and be empowered to make those money decisions later on in life. So even if you're wealthy, and if you had someone controlling money over you, you can still have a money disorder. So it's not always the external environment. I think many times it's our individual experience with our own family members or even our friends which really influence us.
And that's that too. And that, so it's, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It's all about how you learned. And but people can do stuff too to change that too. So it doesn't mean you're going to be stuck to always think that, oh, it's hard to make money, or, oh, money just, I get all this money but I can never save it because I'm always spending it or gambling away.
Exactly.
Right? So, and then that brings us to a next topic, okay? There's this called risk tolerance and risk perception.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like? Because most people say, okay, well, the more risk you take, the more reward. And so I want to see what, from your standpoint, what do you feel about that?
Well, risk tolerance is typically if an individual investor sits down with a financial advisor, they'll take something called a risk tolerance questionnaire. And so essentially that's assessing supposedly how much risk you're willing to take within your overall portfolio. So for example, if you are willing to only put 60% of your money in stocks, that the tolerance for risk would be a maximum of 60% in riskier assets. The risk perception is more of an emotional aspect of how we perceive things. So for example, the financial crisis of 2008, even if people had a certain risk tolerance, if fear and worry of the market losing half of your portfolio in an 18-month period, if that really had a detrimental effect on you, then possibly it's not just your risk tolerance, it's your past experience that's impacting your perception and your emotions, and then you're less likely to put your money back into the market, or many times many people pulled their money out of the market.
And that's why I use a risk tolerance test that won a Nobel Prize. It actually combines the emotional too, the emotional and the risk. So, okay folks, well stay tuned, because when we come back from break we'll be talking more with Professor Victor Ricciardi.
Don Santorillo is an investment advisor representative IAR with Kaplan John LLC, a registered investment advisor RIA firm. DS Financial is an affiliate branch office of Kaplan John LLC. Dawn has a Bachelor of Science degree in Finance from Adelphia University. The information, data, and opinions contained herein in this communications are provided solely for the informational or educational purposes. They are not warranted to be complete, correct, or accurate. To the extent permitted by law, Kaplan John LLC does not accept any liability arising from this communication. You should not assume that any information, data, or opinions contained herein serves as a receipt of or a substitute for personalized investment advice from Kaplan John LLC, its IARs, or any other investment. Past performance is not an indication of future results, and actual results may vary. Investment carries an inherent element of risk, including the risk of losing invested principles. Thank you.
Sorry, we're having technical difficulties there, but we have a lot more to go. So I'm your host, Dawn Santoriello of Conquer Your Finances and Conquer Your Life, and I'm with my guest here, Victor Ricciardi. And let's talk more about your book here. It's called Financial Behavior, and in it you talk about concepts of like mental mistakes, also known as heuristics, loss aversion, and boundary rationality. What are those concepts?
Heuristics are essentially a process that we use as individuals, essentially known as mental mistakes or rules of thumb. Okay. And so these rules of thumb deal with the notion of, so you're presented with a bunch of information and you can only process this information, and with information overload, you come out with a certain income. And so sometimes it winds up being an okay decision, but many times those lead to worse decisions. So an example of a heuristic would be something called anchoring. So anchoring is, or anchoring bias is, we made a bad decision, we lost money on something. And so anytime we're going to go and put money into a certain stock, we anchor on that bad decision we made. And that prevents us from, say, buying a similar stock in the future, or from being even open to investing or a certain stock mutual fund.
So it's like conditioning too.
Yes.
So we're trained to this, like Pavlov's dogs. It's like, okay, I touched the fire and it hurt, so I'm not going to do it again.
Exactly. And then the boundary rationality is essentially just saying that what the rational school says, or standard finance school, what traditional finance that we're talking about, is that people are rational and they're not emotional. Boundary rationality would say that we are dealing with our emotions, our value systems, and that those decisions, that we're not jumping over bridges because of market crashes necessarily, but we're satisfied. If I'm given a choice of 8 different choices, if we choose the top 2 or 3 choices, and not necessarily the top 1 choice, we then have the context of being satisfied and still making a decision. So standard finance would say, I have to have, based on decision making, I'm going to have $1 million in retirement, and to optimize or make the optimal decision, I'm going to achieve $1 million. Sufficing or bad rationality saying, well, if I wind up only having $800,000 rather than $1 million, $800,000 is still a good chunk of change to achieving most of your goal or 80% of your goal.
Yeah, so you shoot for the stars. If you hit the moon, it's okay.
Exactly.
Cool. And you can find out more in his book, Financial Behavior. Now let's talk about, okay, because individuals, I find that a lot of them are afraid to approach a financial planner. So what biases do they have against investing during the whole financial planning process? What do you see?
I think many times, and again, it also depends on the client's or the individual investor's experience. So there's really 2 people who are finance related. One person loves finance, they're very passionate about it, they feel very comfortable going to a financial planner. And the other person who's more of a novice or finance or money's not central to their course. So those people many times don't know enough about finance, they feel intimidated, they feel overwhelmed, and so forth. So, but in that decision-making process, many times it's just trying to take responsibility for understanding your decisions. And so I think the key thing is finding someone that you're comfortable with and that you're going to build trust with. Same thing when you go to buy a car. My biggest thing is, even though I'm a financial expert, I know nothing about repairing cars. So I feel very intimidated when I go to an auto mechanic because they could charge me $500 for a repair, or they could charge me $50. I wouldn't know the difference of necessarily what's wrong with. So it's really part of the process is starting to have that trust and being comfortable, and just even especially into your 20s, into your 30s, making better decisions, starting to think about buying a house, starting to think about retirement planning, starting to think about maybe estate planning. As you get married, have children, thinking about life insurance. And those are all issues where a financial planner or a financial advisor can help you build that comfort level. You don't have to make these decisions all at once, but it's really just starting to take, not necessarily baby steps, but take simple steps to get to that process.
And trust is very important because, again, this financial planner is going to be with you for life. They're going to be there from the beginning to the end. And that's what I just kind of came out with my program called Jumpstart Your Financial Health. So for people who want to just get their toes wet, okay, how is it to work with a financial planner? It only costs $98. They're going to learn how to create an emergency fund. They're going to learn to keep track of their net worth. And they're going to learn how again, psychology of money, how they react to certain things, how to stay on the budget, and just all these different strategies. So that's kind of like, because I want people to start when they're younger. Because a lot of my clients, they're like, come to me when they're like 50. It's like, well, here we can help, but if you were a lot younger, there's a lot of things that we could do to start when you're younger. So for all that. So stay tuned, because we'll be back, and I'll see you after this break.
Dawn Santorillo is an investment advisor representative IAR with Kaplan John LLC, a registered investment advisor RIA firm. DS Financial is an affiliate branch office of Kaplan John LLC. Dawn has a Bachelor of Science degree in Finance from Adelphia University. The information, data, and opinions contained herein in this communications are provided solely for the informational or educational purposes. They are not warranted to be complete, correct, or accurate. To the extent permitted by law, Kaplan John LLC does not accept any liability arising from this communication. You should not assume that any information, data, or opinions contained herein serves as a receipt of or a substitute for personalized investment advice from Kaplan John LLC, its IARs, or any other investment. Past performance is not an indication of future results, and actual results may vary. Investment carries an inherent element of risk, including the risk of losing invested principals. Thank you.
Welcome back to Conquer Your Finances, Conquer Your Life. I'm your host, Dawn Santoriello, and today my guest is Victor Ricciardi. So we're talking about financial behavior, investor behavior. So now let's tell the audience, what could they do when evaluating, because there's so many financial planners out there, there's so many financial advisors, there's brokers, there's this, there's that. How do you weed through all that noise and pick the financial planner you're going to work with?
I would say someone like you, or some essentially what's also known as a CFP, certified financial planner, where they're giving you the full, that's the way to describe it, the full package of your financial health. So a good advisor is going to help you with budgeting, retirement planning, taxes, investment planning, and risk management, along with insurance. And so, again, back to the issue of trust. But it's also, if you're a person who has a different personality, where you're too controlling about your finances, you have to balance off that trust and control relationship, where you don't want to give all the trust and faith to the advisor, because you may have something like a Bernie Madoff situation.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Versus if you're too controlling, you'll never accept the financial advice of the advisor. And then again, just some of the other like behavioral issues that you'll be faced with are people tend to be loss averse, meaning that losses on the downside feel much more powerful than a gain. So when you're making those decisions, try to think of them in the context of an overall portfolio. And so what I think what really the takeaway between standard finance or traditional finance and behavioral finance is traditional finance is how we should behave. Behavioral finance is how we actually behave. So in understanding those biases, I think it's extremely important that once you understand your biases and those bad decisions that you make, you then can be rational.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of that balance of recognizing that we don't always make, we're not always going to make the best decision, but we're going to make mistakes, but then learning from our mistakes are extremely important.
And I tell people too, like even if they're not a CFP, but they do the whole holistic approach and they're a fiduciary and they get to know you as a person and what your goals are, not what they want to push or what their firm is telling them to push, that's important too. Because again, this is going to be a relationship. You're going to be with this person hopefully for your entire life, from the beginning all the way to the end. So that's what I always tell people, make sure you're comfortable with this person. They don't talk down to you, like whether you're comfortable working with a male advisor or a female. They should, when dealing with couples, give them both attention, don't just talk to the man. Make sure the woman feels, because the woman, they hold a lot of the financial power in the household. So and it's important that both partners understand what they're doing and then just feel, and do your research. You go to like, what is that, broker check and see how many complaints has this advisor had against them or anything like that, and make sure they follow like a code of ethics and just that they're putting your best interests first.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with us about what you've learned over your years about when it comes to finance?
I would say really just trying to keep it simple. Really taking a long-term view, trying to understand those pressure points, but the boring stuff works. Putting money into your retirement account, a substantial amount, having an emergency fund of at least 6 months of expenses, having enough insurance, and not using credit cards, and actually paying for stuff in cash. Or if you're going to use credit cards, pay the full balance at the end of every month, and really just planning ahead. You don't have to completely live for the future, but you have to balance all of the present and the future together to have a good, sustainable financial life and overall health, I think.
So basically what your parents taught you, or at least what my parents did, don't use credit cards if you can't pay it off at the end of the month. If you don't have enough cash flow, you can't afford it, so don't get it. And just the traditional things, learn how to, I don't even know if people know how to actually write their checkbook register anymore. I don't know if they do that. I still do that. But and here's another thing too, since you're a professor at college, you're seeing these young millennials, like has it changed over the past 10, 15 years? What have you noticed with the students coming through?
I noticed that they tend, especially they're a generation that was lived through, or at least the earlier years in the early 2000s, you had a internet bubble and a severe bear market in the early 2000s, and of course with the financial crisis. My concern is you're worried about a generational thing, where I think some of the millennials are overly risk averse and are not willing to necessarily put their money in the market. And so the market, putting your money in real estate, high quality real estate portfolios are another way to get a nice return in a low interest rate environment.
And also like the overfunded life insurance. I use that for my clients a lot, depending if they're younger, because again, you can't lose money in there. You're not going to kill it, but still you have that safe compounding interest and it's slow, steady growth, and the money's going to be there when you need it. So it's all about, it's not always just the market, like you said, it's diversification. Having some real estate, insurances, different investments, even businesses, people starting businesses doing that as well. Too.
Exactly. And again, it's just really taking an interest in your own financial situation, because more and more of the decision, whether it's healthcare, retirement, and other types of financial decisions, are coming back on the individual.
Yeah, exactly. So always take responsibility for yourself. Don't rely on the government or anyone else. It's all about you. So now, if they want to buy your book, they can go to Amazon.com, right? Okay, Financial Behavior. We pulled it up one more time. Financial Behavior. And then, if they have any questions for you, how can they reach you?
They can actually find the best way to find me is on Twitter. If they just search by the term behavioral finance, I have over 78,000 followers.
Okay.
And so if they want to, what I do is I promote some of my research, but ultimately what I do is I post content about behavioral finance and just trying to promote financial literacy.
Okay.
And so it's more of a educational venture for me, especially in terms of even the book. It's just trying to get people as educated as possible and excited about the field of behavioral finance.
Okay, great. So check Victor Ricciardi out on Twitter. Also, if you have questions for me or things I could help you with, go to my website at www.dsfinancialstrategies.com. Also, you can like my page on Facebook, Conquer Your Finances, Conquer Your Life. And I hope to empower you to live a happier, healthier, and wealthier lifestyle. Until next time.